Hey everybody, so it is time for another weekly What Sold video. But first of all, I just wanted to do a quick intro of myself. I realize I am so bad at doing that, but I figured if you're new here, then it would be nice for you to know who it is that you're listening to. My name is Shannon. I've been a reseller for close to 20 years, started off on eBay, quickly moved also over into Etsy, and have just been kind of selling on lots of different platforms ever since. At this point, my husband has joined me in the reselling business. He still does a few things on the side as well, but I do have his help in doing this reselling business. It's probably not even saying I have his help anymore. It's probably like 60-40, him doing most of the grunt work. But anyway, like I said, we've been selling for a long time. We don't stick to any one particular niche. We love to sell a variety of items. My personal favorite is selling vintage, and I do focus on that a lot in this channel. You'll see some vintage in my solds. But if I'm at a thrift store and I see something then that I know is worth something, I usually pick it up. So we do have a mix of old and new. And then Mr. Pish Posh brings his expertise into the mix. So you'll see things, he's selling off a lot of his tools. He's just got things that he knows about that end up being listed. We're doing a bit of a clean out. And so we're just trying to make some space and generate some income. So welcome. Leave me a comment down below if you're new to my channel about your experience with reselling. We're going to get right over to starting off with the sales we had like the second week of January. Starting off on eBay. This particular week, eBay was dominant. It definitely, we had the most sales on eBay than we had on any of the other platforms. So I always ask my viewers on these videos to leave me a comment to let me know how their reselling week has been going, if they had a wonderful sale that they wanted to share, or even something that they picked up while they were thrifting that they're excited to get listed. So anyway, we're gonna pop over to the computer and take a look at what sold. It's January, I think like 11th through the 19th, if that matters. Okay, so the first item that we have here is actually something that I talked about in the end of year, beginning of the new year video that I did about certain things that sell well this time of year. And one of the things was anything to do with weight loss or workout, exercise, those types of things. So I had mentioned this in the video. It's the Provita 6-Week Body Makeover by Michael Thurmond. I did not have the entire set. You can get more money if you have like there's a resistance band that goes with it. So mine was partial, but some of what was there was still sealed. And they had started it, like you set up the book according to your body type and things like that. And so it had all the pieces there for them to just kind of redo it. So it still sold for $50. So I was totally happy with getting that. This I'm sure we picked up, and I think I remember picking it up from the little clearance outlet store that we have here in town. And it did come in its original box, but since it wasn't complete, we decided to not sell it with the box and just compact it down so that the shipping would be a little bit better. Next one is a flatware sale. This is Stanley Roberts Contempora. These actually only sold for $25. They're the larger 8-inch like oval soup spoons, place spoons, tablespoons, and very mid-century looking and everything like that. As we've talked about on Flatware Fridays, the soup spoons, the larger spoons, sometimes take a little bit longer to sell and usually sell for less money than like teaspoons or dinner forks, things like that. But we got $25 for those spoons. The next item is some knives, and these knives did sell for $52.79. If you guys remember, if you were watching, it was one of my thrift haul videos. I think that the day it was called Thrifting Date when I went with Mr. Pish Posh out thrifting. And I showed the little footage of when I found these at Goodwill and how excited I was because we have sold this Hardinger pewter pieces before, but I've usually only ever found like serving pieces, like maybe a salad server, or I've found like salt and pepper shakers or a cheese slicer server. So I've never found flatware in this pattern before. So that was super exciting, just for the novelty of it and something that's super interesting. These were pewter, and they were the steak knives, and they were the first to sell out of the pieces that I got that day. And like I said, they ended up selling for $52.79 plus shipping. And then sharing a little bit more of what Mr. Pish Posh has been working on. He has this Bosch table saw that he decided to part it out, and so he just sold these washers, locking nut replacement parts for $25. He's probably made a few $100s so far already on this table saw that he was decided to part out. Here's another little random sale, probably something we also picked up at that clearance center. Could have been Goodwill, I can't remember, but it's not marked with any kind of maker. It's just a small shot glass with like brand marks from a ranch that had a little tooled leather holder on it. And it sold, it was listed for quite a while, but it sold for $24.99. Now this next item I know for sure we got at that little clearance center because I was with Mr. Pish Posh when he picked it up. It's so cheap at that clearance center that we usually can just, if we don't know what something is or it looks somewhat interesting, we can usually just get it. And then if it turns out to be nothing, just redonate it back. So this, I can't remember if he said he looked it up while he was at the store. He might have. But it was called the Bestwell Microsight Microdot Super Sharp Mirror Enlarger Grain Focusing Scope. And we took a $30 offer for this. Again, we paid probably less than $1 for it. And it went pretty quickly, probably within a week. Now this one did take a long time to sell. It's a Torrid underwire swim dress, kind of a swimsuit, swim dress type thing. I did have it priced kind of high. I had it higher than the $59.99 that you see here. It was new with tags, and the original asking price on the tag was like over $100. But I know Torrid does run sales and things like that, so I can't remember. I don't believe that the swim dress was still available, so that's why I had started off at a higher price. I dropped it, relisted, dropped it again down to $59.99, and then I got a $50 offer, which I was super happy to take that. I just found that at Goodwill in the women's swimwear, so it was probably less than $5. Now this belt, I remember sharing with you when we had the belt video. This belt took a while because that belt video was a while ago. And I didn't get a whole lot of interest in this belt. Again, picked this up at our clearance store, I seem to recall. And it was marked State of Claude, Montana. And the only familiarity I had with that designer before was sewing patterns. And so I recognized the name from that. I'm not big into designer clothing. But anyway, saw that name and I thought, oh, that's a good designer. So it did take a little while to sell, and I ended up getting, again, a $50 offer on this belt and ended up accepting that no problem. I probably should have started there to begin with. There just weren't a whole lot of comps, and so we tend to start high and just work with offers whenever there's things that don't have a lot of comps. Okay, so this was a beanie that actually sold for $35. The brand was Torpico, and it was Thinsulate. Here, I'll put it on here. Torpico was Thinsulate. Was just like a fleece beanie. Had the insulation, and it said it was made in Taiwan. So unisex had all the information right there. So Mr. Pish Posh went pretty high on that. I don't know if there was like comps that he was going off of, but someone was willing to pay $35 for that fleece beanie. And then this pair of Picolinos women's clogs ended up selling for $35.19. Normally, the Picolinos that I have sold in the past, they're kind of a well-known, well, what's recognizable about them is that the leather is usually pierced. There's usually a design in the leather. And you can I can spot Picolinos from far away because of that. Now, these were different. The reason I picked them up is because they were in such good condition. And it was a brand that I did recognize, and I think I did a quick comps search, making sure that people actually were looking for the clogs, and not just the traditional pierced leather look. So like I said, sorry, I just kind of lost my place here in the looking at the actual prices that things sold for. So $35.19 for that pair of, and yeah, I would say those took like a few months to sell. We sold this vintage hat. It was just the El Paso Saddle Blanket Company. That sold for $24.99. We've sold a lot of hats in the last year. I'll be talking about that again coming up because things have changed a little bit with our sourcing of hats. So we're you'll probably see less and less of hats in my what sold videos. But that was a nice sale for $25. Now, I think the same day Mr. No, it was actually a different day because he had gone to the clearance store without me one day, and he came home with these knives. Now, I included it here. They're not like the most exciting sale. They only sold for $8, but the brand is Mode Danish. That's what it says on the blade. Let me go down here. Mode Danish, stainless, made in England. So what was interesting is he brought them home and, again, he paid pennies for them. But what was interesting is I've only ever seen these with a wood handle, and I have sold tons of them with the wood handle. They're very mid-century looking. They're very popular. This is the first time I saw this like pearly acrylic handle. So it was just more of a like, hey, that's interesting. And they did sell probably like within a week. We just took the $8 offer to move them on. It would have been better if like we had a set of 6, but those were the only 2 that were there. Now this is an interesting piece. The brand is Emu, and it was made in Australia, and it's made out of merino wool. And it was like this long tank. I guess it could even have been like a tank dress. But anyway, that sold for $24.99. Here was a fun sale of these mittens, but they're gauntlet mountaineering climbing type gloves. And we had been to a thrift store. Let me show you the tag because I could tell it was vintage REI. We had been to the thrift store together, me and Mr. Pish Posh, and he had been looking through all the gloves and accessories and things like that. And then the next day, I went back by myself. Maybe it was a different sale or something else was going on. And I saw these mittens, these gloves hanging up for sale. And I was like, all right, well, they were like $15. It was half off day, so I would be able to pay $7.50. But I didn't want to get them if Mr. Pish Posh had seen them the day before and like had passed on them. So I called him, I sent him a picture, and I'm like, do these look familiar, blah, blah, blah. And it turned out they were new. They had been put out that day. And I checked comps real quick. There weren't too many in solds, but I saw some that were promising. So I said, all right, $7.50, I'm going to go ahead and get them. And they sold for $90. So they're made in the USA, so definitely vintage, and they were insulated with down and just kind of a specialty type thing you're not going to come across super often. But we do love we love selling accessories. I'm kind of getting more into the accessories than the clothing itself. It's much easier. And you know, just don't overlook some of the accessories, because there's money to be made in even vintage gloves and mittens. Here was a kind of a simple beanie that sold by Marmot, just with the spell out and the pom-pom. This actually sold for $20. I did skip some of the other beanies that we've sold that week, just because we're trying to clearance things out as winter is, you know, I don't want to say winter's not really winding down, not where I live, but the amount of people looking to buy winter clothing will start to decrease. And so we're just trying to move some things out in that respect. So we did sell a few more beanies for like $10, $11, but nothing, you know, I tried to just include the ones that maybe we could learn something from. So here's some more of that Hardinger pewter flatware that I found. These were called breakfast forks, and they sold for $29.99. And I still have, I think it's the salad forks listed, and they are actually the most valuable of the pieces that I had. And they are still for sale. They, I probably paid, I should add this in, I got this at Goodwill. They were all in one baggie at Goodwill, and they usually do like $2.99 or $3.99 on their bags of flatware. So not a bad investment, return on investment for those. Gotta love flatware. So join us whenever you want. I used to do Flatware Friday weekly. I did that for a short time, but then now it's kind of just like a feature that pops up every now and then when you guys are least expecting it. Okay. Now this is kind of what I was talking about. I love, my eye gets drawn to vintage. I love selling vintage. But if I'm at the thrift store and I see a brand new Texas Instruments TI-84 graphing calculator on the shelf, I think I've got some footage for like when I found it. I paid $5 for this. I noticed other people were selling it. If you look over here, it says new open box. Mine was sealed, but I was still kind of nervous. It was sealed with just one of those round plastic dot sticker type things. And I was like, I'm afraid to just like sell something sight unseen. So I noticed that a lot of people were selling them as new open box. So we went ahead and opened it just to kind of show what was inside the box. And we just listed it that way and explained that it had been sealed, but we just verified condition of the contents and everything like that. And here's an instance where I looked at solds and I'm like, okay, $69.99, that's about the sweet spot. It would probably sell very quickly. We listed at $69.99. There weren't too many above that. Well, Mr. Pish Posh, we know, he likes to go even higher. And this was one of those cases where it worked out. Sometimes it works against us. Things will sit for too long and then you have to send out really aggressive offers. But here was a case where he went ahead and did $89.99. I was thinking we'd have to, run a sale or do some offers. And somebody bought it within like a day. I think it was like by the next day, it was sold for the full asking of $89.99. So sometimes you just never know. Here was another item Mr. Pish Posh picked up at a yard sale, and I think we showed it in a video, but that was last summer, and that's too long to remember for you guys. But he found this motorcycle passenger seat at a yard sale, and it finally sold, because that was last summer. It finally sold for $50, and he was thrilled to have this thing out of our garage. Here was a little percolator, 9-cup percolator. It was super cute, very mid-century looking. I don't remember if I picked this up or he picked this up. As I said, we're trying to work through our backlog of stuff. I made a video about my worst mistake in 2024 is that we just have too much stuff in backlog and we need to just start attacking it and get it listed so that I have a clean conscience when it comes around time for yard sale season again, and I can go get more stuff. Okay, so this, we just thought it was really cool. We got a few lower offers, but finally just accepted a $35 offer on that one. And this was just a fun, again, most likely came from the bins, our little clearance store. It's a vintage ski tote that has a water bottle built into it. So it's kind of like a fanny pack, but with a water bottle built into it. It was very vintage, so I had picked it up at some point, and that sold for $18.99. I think if it had been brighter colors, it probably would have gone faster. And then another pair of suspenders we sold for $19.99. These were just Cole Haan. I generally tend to pick up suspenders. We've been doing pretty well selling them. And these, you know, just green and blue, nice colors. Not huge money, but when we finally did get some of our suspenders that we had kind of gathered up, we got them listed. They all sold pretty quickly. So I definitely do kind of keep my eye out for some of the better brands of suspenders. And then another baseball cap. This was just the Boeing Company, kind of a basic hat, sold for $22.49. Sold some flatware. This is Oneida. The pattern is called Frostfire. I got a few pieces of this. I might have sold the dinner forks in the last video, if you guys remember. These 4 iced teaspoons sold for $26.09. It was interesting. I was poking around looking for something else right like the same day these sold, and I found a bag from a thrift store with flatware in it, and I had found more. So I forgot about that. So I found like 6 more, I think. And so it was super easy to just do a sell similar off my own listing and get some more iced teaspoons listed right away. Okay, we're still on eBay. This I mentioned in my last haul video, the vintage haul. And I had mentioned that this had sold pretty quickly. Pencil sharpeners. We talk about them in the office supply video. But in any case, I found this at Goodwill. It was like $2.99. It was all taped up, and I was like, man, I hope what's inside is actually what's advertised on the box. But I didn't, you know, sometimes I open things at the thrift store, but I just kind of took a chance on that. And it did look like it was new and hadn't been used. And so that sold very quickly for $40. And then, so wouldn't it be awesome if these blue cobalt mugs had that celestial star pattern on it that we talked about, that by Libby, you know, that we had talked about in the last coffee mug video. But they don't, and they're not marked Libby. A lot of people said Libby in the title, but all they said on the bottom was like made in the USA. But Mr. Pish Posh found these at the clearance store, and he brought them home because he's like, they're just so heavy duty. They're like super thick, the cobalt blue glass, and he's like, I just feel like somebody would want them. And I was like, of course. So they ended up selling for $45. So we thought that was a good deal. The coffee mug video, we talked about the ones with the celestial pattern on it were popular from the TV show Friends, and they would have been worth a lot more than the $45, but that was still a good return on investment especially from our little clearance store. Here's a pair of snowboard pants, snow pants that were women's. Not a brand that we necessarily knew about, but they were new with tags. We brought them home. $62.99. Just picked them up at Goodwill. And I think it was a viewer had mentioned, I think that's where we talked about it, but just the fact that January can be a good month to sell snow equipment, ski equipment, snowboarding, things like that. So to not feel like once the holidays are over, you know, that it's like too late to get your outerwear listed, but a lot of this stuff will sell in the month of January, and we do kind of find that to be true. So if that was one of you guys in the comments that had mentioned that to us before, thank you so much. Anyway, those sold for $62.99. We probably paid like, I want to say $12.99 is what the Goodwill would probably price those at. And then I think this is my last Amarok Carriage House towel bar. I feel like I have one of these in almost every What Sold video in the last few weeks. This was a shorter one, a little 24-inch one. And like I said, Mr. Pish Posh is going through listing hardware, stuff we've accumulated. I've kind of told that story in the past. And also, we did have at one point, a vintage hardware shop. We ran it on Etsy for a little while, so we have inventory left over from that. And I tend to just, if I see something like this at like a garage sale or yard sale, I pick it up and bring it home. Amarok Carriage House it tends to be one of the most popular Amarok vintage patterns. It's like from the 60s or so. Okay, so like I said, eBay was probably the most prolific of the week of the sales. There was a couple over on Posh. Sales had slowed down on Posh pretty severely. They've picked up recently because I'm trying something else, which I'll share in a future video. But just sold another, easy pair of vintage shoes that I found at the thrift store, just $21. I was hoping with this super cool feature on them that would be more interesting and I could get a better price. Didn't have a whole lot of interest in the places that I had them listed. Possibly if I had crossed them over to Etsy, that would have been a better deal, but I didn't really have an Etsy shop set up for that type of thing at that point when I listed them. So I was just happy to have anyone show any kind of interest. Took the $21 offer and moved them on. Okay, LL Bean, just $17 for this beanie. It was new with tags, but probably we grabbed it at a regular thrift store. And sold this Patagonia organic cotton, just this like casual dress. You could call it like a skater dress or something like that. Sold for $25. Then one little sale on Depop was this Intimately Free People trapeze style dress, extra small. Free People, their size is extra small, usually means like large is what I've noticed, but very roomy. And that sold for, I think, $19.50 or something. And one little sale on Ruby Lane. I do need to get some more stuff, new stuff listed into Ruby Lane. I do have, I've had a few more sales recently, and I've got some time today and tomorrow to work on some listings. We had a lot going on in our personal life last week where I don't feel like I listed as much as I had hoped to. So anyway, that's my excuse. So Clyban, everybody loves Clyban, right? The cat. And I had found this big collection of Clyban cat mugs by Kilncraft at a yard sale last summer. And so I was happy. This one sold for $24. Now popping over to Etsy, this is in the Mr. Pish Posh, the shop that he kind of runs on Etsy, even though we're kind of both starting to work on it a little bit more. We've talked about the fact that we're trying to up our Etsy game a little bit, even though it's a long story I won't get into. We'd gotten away from Etsy, always dabbled in it a little bit, but maybe we'll work on building it back up again. We'll see. So anyway, he was so shocked that these swivel casement window handles sold on Etsy for $40, and they ended up like going overseas. So at first he was kind of like, I don't know that he wasn't sure. He's cleaning out all this vintage hardware and things he's collected from different jobs and things like that. And he kind of on a whim just crossed them over to Etsy, and that's where somebody found them, and they sold for $40. So he's like, I should put some more of that kind of stuff over there. Sounds like a plan. And then we sold this belt buckle. I think this was a yard sale pickup last summer. This owl buckle sold for $35. And now we're in the pattern shop. So the rest of the video is the patterns that sold in our pattern shop on Etsy, Pish Posh Notions. This Simplicity pattern sold for $12. This McCall's, I mentioned this in an earlier video. This was one of the most popular patterns in my shop at the moment. I had 2 of them. So the second one sold for $16 as well, but very Y2K, and this baby doll style is very popular right now. And I mentioned last time, if you can find that type of style clothing in the thrift stores from back then, it's selling for really good money right now. Then a Puffalump pattern sold for $15. The Puffalumps themselves, I think, sell pretty well in the plush market. Then this Vogue pattern, just simple dress, sold for $10. Another Vogue pattern, Tracy Reese is the designer, sold for $15. And such a fun pattern. This Butterick pattern was his and hers, pants and shorts. But if you look, I don't know if you can see the waist on these. Oh, now my thing won't load. Okay, the waist on these was this like wrap style. So 90s. I think these were from 1991, but gotta love that fabric that they chose. Just super, super fun. Anyway, brings back memories. $15 for that Butterick pattern. Another $15 pattern, this McCall's party dress. I think actually the woman asked for a coupon, so I might have sold it for like $13.50 is what's popping into my head. And another Puffalump. So we are 2 different buyers, but the same week, you know, both of these Puffalump patterns had been listed for a while. And then they both sold separately. So I don't know if something's going on in the Puffalump world. You just never know. Okay, $15 for that pattern. And $14 for this kind of basic pullover top by Vogue. Okay, so that's it, everybody, for the What Sold. Thanks for joining me and listening to me share the different things that I've sold. Hopefully they help you see the potential in some of the different items that are out there in the thrift store and the potential for making money on all sorts of different items. So as I said at the beginning, please leave me a comment down below how your week is going, your best sales, all that kind of thing. And I will see you later on this week.